Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's scrap meeting. We just have one thing on the agenda today, unless you have any other topics to add after that. That is the discussion on the local practice about height for creating new records. It says if height is more than 2 centimeters, we should create a new record. But the question came up in the listserv, if it is the only difference and everything else is the same, is a new record necessary? So some of the things brought up in the discussion were that this guideline was from the document called Differences Between Changes Within from ALA. And there's also the OCLC guideline. Excuse me, sorry. So the OCLC guideline for 300 subfield C says a difference of more than 2 centimeters that is not a result of local binding or trimming may justify a new record. So one thing I think that someone pointed out here was that it uses the word may. So another person suggested that this could be the difference between the mass market paperback and a trade paperback. So what are your thoughts on this topic? Feel free to unmute yourself.
Well, I was wondering how much of a difference it actually makes to the patrons on the size of the paperback.
Personally, I don't think they would notice. They rarely look at the detailed record. And Adrienne typed in the chat that fewer records are better, in her opinion.
I would agree with that. And if it's not making a difference to the patrons on the size of the paperback, I would go for having it, as long as that's the only difference, keeping it all on the same record.
I guess my opinion is that I'm not sure we need the rule here. I think the idea of, it may justify a new record. I feel like that's cataloger's discretion. If you feel like there's a real reason for having a different record, then make a different record. But otherwise, I mean, the guidelines are already there. I'm not sure we need that local rule anymore for exactly what you've been saying, because fewer records make everything run more cleanly.
I have mixed feelings on it, because I do remember a lot of the past discussions that we had about moving away from a single record that describes every single manifestation in the database. It came down to patron holds, because then font size was important. Binding was important, because someone who is traveling and taking a paperback may not want the weight of the hardcover in the suitcase. Patrons being able to place their own holds on exactly what they want, but then that doesn't help with the patron who just wants the first available copy. Part of my struggle with it is how many people are still tied to our physical collections versus our digital holdings. And, we've always followed national practice. So the guidelines are, in essence, for us, national practice, along with many of the things that the Library of Congress does. Sorry, I just got this little frog in my throat this morning. So I'm not sure which way I really want to go with this. You know, because if we're doing something like posting OCLC holdings and we're placing holds or having holds on our collection through OCLC, what are the expectations for those holds, or do we care?
That's a good
Just a
point.
question. And I'm looking at the OPAC right now. I don't think it's very obvious to the patron when they're looking at the OPAC whether something is paperback or hardback. I guess they would probably ask staff to put them on hold for one or the other if they had a preference. But if someone's just using the catalog, it doesn't look like there's really a good way to tell unless you go into the MARC record.
Right. And in many cases, the paperback and hardcover are on the same record, and staff wouldn't even be able to tell which item is which. There are some comments in the chat. Heather commented that there may be a difference in font size, but doesn't know if patrons would be aware of it. Michelle commented that she knows if we have more records. Sorry, she said, I know if we have more records, then holds could end up being lopsided. Before Highland Park joined CCS, we put hardcover and paperbacks on the same record more often because for that reason. Adrian agrees that it's better for fulfilling holes. And Michelle said that my other question is if this document differences between changes within is ever going to be updated. She noticed it hasn't been updated since 2007 and understands Kathy's point. We do know that some patrons prefer one format over the other. Heather said that I think if a patron wants first available copy, they will place multiple holds on every item type, at least in her personal experience. And Len asks, is it national practice conditional? With the OCLC guideline, I do think that you're right, it could be conditional because they use that word may. So I think that leaves it open to the cataloger's interpretation. Stephanie says you could look at the price to tell the difference between hardcover and paperback. Okay, that's a good point. I don't know if staff would take the time to actually look at the difference in price, though.
I think it would depend on the staff.
I
I know
agree.
if CERC staff would do that when they're pulling from the pick list, whereas it's possible if a public services staff member is working with the patron and they're saying, you know, I really like the hardcovers better, or I have a preference for, or I don't want something with teeny tiny print, they may actually start looking to see those distinctions. So I think at the end of the day, as we're deciding this, are we doing this just to make things easier for us? Or are we doing this to make things better for our patrons? Because I know when I was here back when we had the various edition records, and for interlibrary loans were very staff intensive because everything but the large print was on a single record. So if someone wanted something specific, then ILL staff were calling around to see who had the paperback and could they send the paperback or the hardcover or whatever version they were looking for. And I don't know if we're in a position to be placing that burden on another department. Like I said, I have mixed feelings on this.
Hmm.
I think that
Michelle commented.
Sorry. Regardless of which way we go, there's some patrons who would benefit and some who would find it worse. You know, if it's a patron who just wants the first available copy, it's better for it to be same record. If it's a patron who wants a very specific thing, it's better to be a separate record. So to my mind, if the insides are the same, you know, same pagination, same everything, you know, if the difference is 3 centimeters, but it's not mass market versus regular hardcover or regular or trade paperback, that to my, and I don't know if this is true, but to my mind, there's more people who just want the book and not, I want to make sure I'm getting the hardcover, the paperback. And regardless, we're putting hardcover and trade paperbacks on the same record generally, as long as all the everything else lines up. So yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like there are some mixed feelings about this issue. It could make it easier to place holds, but staff may have some patrons that request a specific type of book, whether it's paperback or hardcover or font size. And they wouldn't be able to tell the difference if it's on the same record. A lot of books are still using the same record and they do have to place the title hold, so they wouldn't be able to tell the difference if they were on the same record. And sometimes it causes problems with staff needing to contact other libraries. So keeping in mind these different opinions, does anyone want to make a motion for a recommendation for changing this local practice?
I'll motion to combine the records if there are no differences in content. And the difference is only a couple centimeters.
I'll second that. This is
Nora seconds it?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just gonna take some notes here. 1 second. So Adrian motioned to combine the records if the only difference is the height.
Correct.
Am I wording that correctly?
Yes.
I also heard that it was only a couple of centimeters for the height.
Kathy, I can't hear you. Can you speak a bit louder or closer to the mic?
I heard that the recommendation was only if it was for a couple of centimeters in difference for the height. Adrian, can you repeat what you initially said?
Yeah, I think Rachel has it right. I think I may have said a couple centimeters, but I think combining regardless of height is more accurate. That's what I meant.
Okay. So I have the Adrian motion to combine the records if the only difference is the height. Michelle asks, or says that she assumes that if two different editions were 4 or 5 centimeters apart in height, there would be more differences. I would
Right,
think
which
that
is
could,
why I think we're saying if that's the only difference, if, you know, there's an addition statement or the pagination is different, then obviously it would belong in a different record.
okay. So I'm going to go through the roll call, and we can do a roll call vote on the recommendation. Michelle? Michelle says yes. Lynn Rubio?
I'm gonna say no, but I do want to explain that the reason I would say no is that I really kind of feel like we should leave it up to the cataloger's discretion. If that makes sense.
Tammy?
I say yes.
Nora
Yes.
said yes because she seconded. Adrian made the motion. So yes, Heather? Heather says no, and Kathy?
I abstain.
Okay. So it's 4 yeses, 2 nos, and 1 abstention. So since both of the no's said that they agree that catalogers can use some discretion, was wondering, would it be better to make the recommendation that if the record's only difference is the height, the cataloger may choose to use the same records at their own discretion?
I would really like that. Yes.
I
That's
think
exactly what.
I agree. That's the way to go.
Okay.
I would be in favor of that.
So would I.
Adrian, is it okay to change the recommendation for your motion to state that catalogers can do so at their own discretion?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Okay, and making this change would either of the no's or abstentions like to change their vote?
I would change my vote to yes.
So would I. That's Lynn.
Okay, so with that change, everyone has changed the vote to yes. So the recommendation passed. Since Scrap can only make recommendations. We're going to have to bring this to CAM. And we can add that to CAM meetings agenda for November. Is there anything else anyone would like to talk about today? All right, since there's nothing else that anyone would like to talk about, we can adjourn the meeting. I will end the recording now. One moment.